In Planet Reddit, today's story is...
My fiancé used the death of his ex as an excuse to cancel our wedding, but after 7 months of engagement, I discovered his surprising secret plan. Hi everyone, I'm going through a really tough time and I urgently need some advice. I, female, 27, got engaged to Bryce, male, 27, about 7 months ago. Our wedding is scheduled for 2 months from now. We've been together for 3 years and I thought we loved each other deeply, but now I have serious doubts. Everything was going perfectly until almost a month ago, when Bryce found out from some friends that his ex had passed away. I will call this ex Kelly. They were together for 2 years at university. Their relationship was on and off, and they remained friends for a few months after graduating, but then they lost touch and had not spoken for the last 6 years. I understand that the news affected him, and I tried to be as understanding as possible, but 3 days ago he told me he wanted to cancel our wedding. In the weeks after receiving the news of her death, she had been distant, but I assumed it was because she was processing the impact. As his fiancé, I offered him my full support, but he continued to shut down emotionally. I also tried to give him space, which seemed to work temporarily, so I thought he was improving. But then he surprised me with this drastic decision. I tried to talk to him and persuade him to reconsider, but he confessed that he had had an epiphany after finding out about Kelly, and had realized that he needed to be single for a while. The conversation got out of hand after that comment, because while he was expressing his desire to cancel the wedding, I was willing to talk and work things out. However, when he mentioned that he felt the need to be single, I lost patience. I had been understanding with him for weeks, and I simply reached my limit. It was clear that something was going on that he wasn't telling me, and I was tired of waiting for him to open up to me. In the middle of our argument, I took off my engagement ring and threw it at him. I told him that if he really wanted to be single, he could be single forever, because I was finished with him. He was offended and upset, so he packed some belongings and left. Since then, I have had no direct communication with him. His parents have made a big fuss about this, and now they blame me because apparently he is very upset and has been miserable since he arrived home. They have said that I am insensitive and consider my behavior completely unnecessary, as he lost someone he had a close relationship with and is obviously shocked. They think I should have been more understanding. They are upset with me and want me to apologize for my behavior in order to have an amicable separation. I honestly disagree with them. I think he deserved my reaction. So, am I wrong for ending it with my fiancé while I was processing the loss of his ex-girlfriend? Addition. Hi, I realized that I left out several important details in my original post because I was in a hurry. First, Kelly's death was not unexpected. Bryce contacted her parents after he found out, and they informed us that she passed away in her sleep. She had been ill for some time. She was diagnosed with leukemia 2 years ago, but only her close friends and family knew about her condition. Since she and Bryce had barely spoken after their breakup, he was completely unaware of her situation. That's how distant they were. They hadn't even spoken in years. I can understand that he is affected by her death, but I honestly don't understand why he would cancel our wedding because of it. And of course, as well as being humiliating, it's also financially worrying because everything is paid for. The wedding is in just 2 months, please. And when we talked about his desire to be single, I also mentioned this aspect. My parents and I had invested considerably in the wedding, so I told him that if he canceled it, he and his family would have to reimburse us because clearly this was his decision. I had no say in the matter, and I wasn't even happy about it. He expected my parents and I to put up with his indecision, and he intended for us to split both the cancellation charges and the refund we would receive. I don't see how that would be fair. He was canceling the wedding. Why would we risk our money? Anyway, the argument wasn't exclusively about the wedding or his desire to be single. Many issues like this came up, and I just don't know what to say anymore. To be honest, I've started to think that maybe he never wanted to marry me, and this is just an excuse to back out of the wedding without looking like the villain. It's just a hunch for now, but considering how he and his parents are behaving, I don't think it's far from the truth. I just don't have any words. Honestly, I'm lost. Update 1. Hello. Thank you so much for all your support. It means a lot to me. It has given me some confidence to know that at least I am not completely wrong in this situation, and it has also given me clarity about what I want. I have decided that I no longer wish to marry him because obviously that is not what he wants either. And I don't want to force anyone to be with me, especially when they prefer to be single. So yesterday afternoon I called him and told him that I wanted to end it for good. I asked him to come and collect his belongings and leave. He started to argue, saying that we had both shared this house and split the rent for years, so it wasn't fair for me to throw him out like that. I replied that I was willing to pay him back his share of the month's rent, but I wanted him to leave. After what he had done to me, it was the least he could do for me. He had no reply to that. In a couple of hours, he showed up. He brought a van, probably a friend's, and started packing his things very aggressively. He made a lot of noise, and the whole time he was here, he kept muttering complaints in a low voice. I knew he was very upset with me, but honestly I didn't care because after what he had done, I didn't think he had the right to be angry with me. And if I'm honest, I felt like he was more upset about losing the house than about losing our relationship. After so many years together, living with him and making sure he was happy, if this is what I get from him, I'm really glad I didn't marry him. I can't imagine anyone being more upset about losing their home and having to move in with their parents than about their wedding being canceled. Although, again, he was the one who called it off, so I guess it's absurd to expect him to show any kind of regret about it. When he finished packing, he started to carry his things to the van. Even then, he was still mumbling constantly. After a while, he started to irritate me, so I asked him to stop because I was trying to see something and he was getting on my nerves. That was my big mistake, because he took that opportunity to start an argument. He started telling me that since I hadn't written him a check yet for his share of the rent, it was still his house too, and he could do what he wanted. Naturally, I got quite annoyed, got up, wrote him a check immediately and handed it to him. Then I told him that he needed to leave immediately because I was finished with him. I was getting upset, and I could no longer tolerate his presence. But then, imagine his audacity, he decided to tear the check to pieces in front of me, threw it in my face, and said he had changed his mind. He wasn't going anywhere. This was his home too, and I had no right to pressure him the way I was. At that point, I started to lose my cool because until then I had really tried to keep my composure. But I felt like he was deliberately provoking me just to see how much I could take before I exploded. Finally I did. I started yelling at him that he needed to leave or I would call the police. And I wasn't kidding. He started calling me unbalanced and told me that this was exactly why he wouldn't marry me anymore, because I clearly had mental problems, that there was something deeply wrong with me that needed attention. He started making up lies about me, telling them to me directly, claiming that I had forced him to get engaged and start planning the wedding when he wasn't even ready. To clarify, that absolutely did not happen. A few weeks before we got engaged, we simply discussed the idea of getting married. Like any couple who have been together long enough, and at my age, I don't think it was surprising. Of course I want to get married and start a family. And I had been with him for a long time, so I wanted to know where he stood on the subject. That was all that happened. I never told him that I wanted him to propose immediately or that I wanted to get married within a year. I never gave him any kind of ultimatum, so I really don't understand what he meant when he said that I had forced him or whatever. When I confronted him about his lies, he started accusing me of manipulating him. I don't even know where to start with that, because clearly he was trying to manipulate me. The argument went round and round for several minutes, until I simply got fed up. I told him that if he wasn't willing to leave, then I would leave. Because finally, none of this mattered to me anymore. I just wanted to get away from him, because it was clear that whatever love we had had during our time together had completely disappeared. And now he was just trying to wear me down. I had promised myself not to cry in his presence because it would make me look vulnerable, and I didn't want that. But the situation became really difficult, and I couldn't help myself. I broke down in tears and began to sob sitting on the sofa. At that moment, one would expect at least some empathy or compassion. But even then, he couldn't be bothered to show a little humanity. As I cried on the sofa, instead of comforting me, he began to mutter that he didn't want to see me cry and that he didn't intend to make me break down like that, but that ultimately it was also my fault. According to him, there was no reason for me to start an argument when he was already leaving. Even at that moment, he insisted on manipulating me into believing that I had provoked the fight, when in reality, it was he who had started behaving aggressively from the beginning. By then I no longer had the energy to argue. I just kept crying because the situation had become irreparable. I cried because this was not the man I had known for so many years. He wasn't the man I had fallen in love with, and he definitely wasn't the man I had ever thought of marrying. I didn't even recognize what he had become, and it broke my heart. I was devastated by his behavior. Although we have had arguments in the past, it was never as terrible as this. It was never as toxic. He never tried to push me to the limit like he did recently. I had no idea what had gone wrong with him. But something had clearly changed to make him behave like that, and I just couldn't bear it. So until he left, I just kept crying, and even after he left, I continued crying for another half hour. I literally cried myself to sleep and took a nap on the sofa. By the time I woke up, it was midnight. I hardly slept all night, and I'm writing this at 4 a.m. When he left, he wasn't mumbling anymore. He just left in silence. He didn't try to console me or say goodbye. He just closed the door and left. Do I feel bad about all this? Yes, of course I do. I don't think I can help it despite what happened. I can't forget that this was the man I was planning to marry. And until recently, everything had been perfect. I could say that maybe he really had some kind of revelation after learning of Kelly's death. But honestly, I think he was just using that as an excuse to hide the fact that he no longer wanted to get married himself. I've been thinking about this for a few days now. I mentioned it before too, but today I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happened. Otherwise, I can't find a logical and rational explanation for his behavior. The accusations he made against me are clearly projections of his own. He thinks I forced him to commit, but he did it voluntarily, and now he can't accept that he ruined everything. He's trying to make me look like the villain, but that obviously won't work because I remember how things happened. And I won't allow him to manipulate me into believing that I'm the bad guy. It just hurts that we were together for so long, and he didn't even bother to be honest with me. If he didn't want to get married, if he didn't feel ready, he could have said so, and I would have gladly waited for him. It wouldn't have been a problem. I loved him enough to do that for him. But now I know he didn't love me enough to be honest and transparent with me. It was more important for him to appear to be the good guy than to be honest with the woman he supposedly loved. So not only did he lie to me, he's been lying to himself too. And it's all really sad. I don't know what to think anymore. I'm just indescribably disappointed in him. All I can say is that I'm glad the wedding was canceled because I don't think he was happy with me. And honestly, I don't think he would have let me be happy with him either. Update 2. Hello. It's been a couple of weeks since my last update. Bryce, his parents, and mine have started the process of canceling everything related to the wedding. My parents have been considerate enough not to bother me with these details. And since Bryce and his parents don't want to talk to me, they haven't contacted me about it either. I'm obviously going through a lot. The last 2 weeks have been a real mental struggle for me. All I've done is go to work and come home. Although I keep it together at work because I have to, at home I can't help but completely fall apart. I keep thinking about everything that could have been. It's obviously not healthy. So I've actively started to avoid thinking about Bryce or anything related to him. I've kept every little object that reminded me of him simply because I don't want to think about him anymore. I don't know if it's healthy or not, but it's the only way I can deal with it at the moment. I don't feel ready for therapy, and I really don't have time for it either, so I'm not considering it for now. I have also archived our conversations, and that hurt more than having to break up with him. But it was necessary. I have deleted all our photos together from my phone, although they are still stored in the cloud. I don't think I'm ready to delete them permanently for a while, so I'll leave them there, but I'll stay away from them. In addition to that, I have made many other changes to my lifestyle. I've started going to the gym to distract myself. I started running in the mornings. And for the last few days, although I can't say I've been particularly happy, at least I'm not constantly collapsing and crying. So I consider that an improvement. We haven't made any public announcements yet. Nobody knows we're over. But I don't think it will be long before people figure out what's going on, because we've blocked each other. We're no longer following each other on social media. If someone decides to investigate, they'll find out. And more obviously, we've deleted the post announcing our engagement and all our other photos together. So yes, if anyone tries to find out, it will be very easy to discover that we have broken up and that we will no longer be getting married. I haven't even told my closest friends yet, but I guess I'll have to do it soon. Anyway, that's all for now. Please keep me in your thoughts because although I'm physically fine, I think I really need support to get through this mentally. Update 3. It's been almost 5 days since my last update. A couple of days ago, I finally told my closest friends about everything that had happened. I invited them over because I wanted to give them the news in person, as I didn't think this was something I simply wanted to communicate to them via text message. And as I mentioned, I was struggling mentally, so I also wanted to be surrounded by people. My parents have continued to call me every couple of days, and I am really grateful to them. But I felt like I needed my friends too. We got together, and obviously they had a lot of questions about why I had been so distant for the past few weeks, because I haven't spoken to them at all. In fact, I don't think I've been talking to anyone much except for work-related matters. And naturally, they noticed that Bryce and I had unfollowed each other and deleted all our posts together. When they came, they also noticed that he was gone and that many of his belongings had disappeared. They hadn't asked about social media because they didn't want to pry, and they felt that I would tell them when I was ready, which I did. I explained the whole situation to them, and as I talked about it, I ended up breaking down again. It tends to happen every time I think or talk about it, so I wasn't surprised. But it was comforting to have my friends around. They consoled me and assured me that everything would be okay, and that they were there for me. They accompanied me, they allowed me to cry, and it was really nice to have them present and finally talk about this openly. I have also talked to my parents about it, but obviously I can't talk to them in the same way I do with my friends. It felt good to let off steam, and they told me it was their loss because he could have stayed with me and had a wonderful life. But now he will always regret doing this. Perhaps the regret won't come immediately, but in a few years, he will know what he lost. Feeling nervous before a wedding is normal, but behaving the way he did is anything but normal. They made me see that I had really avoided a worse situation, and obviously I agree with them. We went out for a drink later, and I ended up having a pretty good time for the first time in weeks. That was a couple of days ago, and yesterday Bryce called me. I had only blocked him on social media. I hadn't blocked his number. I considered not answering, but he called several times, so I finally picked up. He told me he needed me to unblock him because he wanted to post a joint statement on Instagram announcing our separation. He said he wanted it to be something we both did together, so it wouldn't seem one-sided. I didn't understand what he meant, so he explained that he wanted a joint statement because then it would seem like it had been a mutually agreed decision, as opposed to him breaking up with me or me breaking up with him. Once again, he wanted to appear as the good guy in the story and didn't want to give anyone a clue that he had left me without even having the courage to be completely honest with me when he did it. I found his request completely ridiculous and told him I wouldn't unblock him for any reason. If he wanted to publish a statement about our breakup, he could do so, but I wouldn't participate because the truth is that it wasn't as amicable as he was trying to present it. It wasn't something we both wanted. He wanted it and didn't care what I wanted. He broke up with me in a rather undignified manner and had been dishonest the whole time. So that's the version I'll stick with, the truth. And frankly, I don't care how others perceive it. It's not my problem. He started arguing with me, but I just hung up and blocked him because I had no time to waste on this. I later found out from some mutual friends that he had posted a statement claiming that it had been a decision we had both made. They reached out to me to console me, but I was completely honest with them and told them that the post was totally untrue, that he had made that post against my will, and I told them the truth. So now they know exactly what happened. I don't care if it seems awkward or vindictive. I know it was important to him to appear to be a good person in front of everyone. And it was equally important to me that everyone knew that this was not the truth. And if that makes me seem petty, so be it, because honestly I am past caring about that. Update 4. As I expected, my decision to tell our mutual friends the truth about what had really happened did not please Bryce at all. He posted extensively afterwards about how I was promoting a false narrative to victimize myself. It was all lies, and people should trust him because at least he had made an effort to preserve my dignity despite my behavior. He claimed he was disappointed in the way I had chosen to handle the situation, as if I cared. I think he has disappointed me enough for a lifetime. I don't expect anything better from him. Most of our mutual friends decided to believe him, which was not surprising either because many of them were people I met after I started going out with him. So regardless of whether he was telling the truth or not, I knew they would take his side, but at least now I have the satisfaction of knowing that I expressed my truth. Whether people like it or not is secondary. Now everything is finalized and resolved, and I am finally going to try to move on. My friends have put me in touch with a therapist, and I guess I will start my sessions soon. I hope it leads to some improvement. I have continued to go to the gym and run in the mornings, and I have also been working on a business model. Now that I have a lot of time on my hands since I'm not getting married, I've decided to invest it in building something of my own. There are many new opportunities waiting for me. I'm going to keep myself busy, and I'm not going to allow myself to regret the loss of this man who is clearly not good for me. In the end, as my friend told me, it will be his loss, and by the time he realizes it, it will be too late. It is already too late. I loved him and he lost me. But anyway, I'm better now, and although sometimes I catch myself missing him, I remind myself of what he did. And that helps me to stop thinking about him.